You have seen the number. It comes around every summer now, attached to a photo of a shimmering skyline, and it looks like a misprint. 58 degrees Celsius. A reading so high that if it were the actual air temperature, it would beat the hottest temperature ever reliably recorded anywhere on the surface of the Earth. So let us be honest about it before we go one sentence further, because the honesty is the whole point. The thermometer in Dubai did not read 58. On the hottest days of these heat waves, the actual air temperature in the city sits in the mid-40s. Dubai's own all-time record in more than half a century of measurement is around 47 degrees. 47 is brutal, but it is not a world record, and it is not new. The 58 is a different kind of number. It is not what the air measured. It is what the air did to a human body. It is the heat index. The so-called feels-like temperature, which folds humidity into the raw heat to describe not how hot the air is, but how hot it is to survive in. And in Dubai, that number has climbed into the high 50s and past 60 on the worst days, driven not by the desert alone, but by the sea beside it. But here's why this video is not really about that number at all. Because the 58 is a symptom of something far larger, and it points to a single word that is quietly becoming the most important word in the study of where humans can live. Uninhabitable, Dubai is where we are running the experiment. It is the place, more than almost anywhere on Earth, where heat has already crossed the line past which a city can no longer be inhabited the way cities have always been inhabited, in the open air, by ordinary people, without machines. And the results of that experiment are already in. So let us look at what uninhabitable actually means, because it is not what most people think, and once you understand it, that shimmering skyline looks very different. Start with the word itself, because it is almost always misunderstood. When people hear that heat could make a city uninhabitable, they picture an apocalypse, empty streets, a ghost town, everyone dead or fled. That is not what it means, and imagining it that way makes the real thing easy to dismiss, because obviously Dubai is not a ghost town. It is one of the fastest growing, wealthiest, most crowded cities on the planet. Uninhabitable means something more precise and stranger. It means that the outdoor environment for part of the year becomes something a human body cannot survive and unassisted. Not uncomfortable, not unpleasant, unsurvivable, without help. And that splits every place on Earth into two categories that we almost never name. There are naturally habitable places where a person can simply live with the environment, walk through it, work in it, sleep in it, and stay alive. And there are artificially habitable places where a person can only live inside machines that hold the real environment at bay, and where stepping fully into that real environment for long enough will kill them. For most of human history, essentially every inhabited place was in the first category. You could survive outside. Dubai, for a growing stretch of every single year, has crossed into the second. The honest statement is not that Dubai will become uninhabitable someday. It is that Dubai, in the only sense that matters, already is, for months at a time. Strip away the air conditioning, and no one could survive a Dubai summer. The city exists in July and August entirely by artificial means. That is a genuinely new thing for a major city, and to understand how it happened. You have to go back to that feels like number, because it is the honest measure of the line being crossed. The reason a 43-degree day can feel like 58 is not media exaggeration. It is physiology, and it is exact. Your body runs at about 37 degrees, and it will fight to hold that temperature. On a hot day, it sheds heat in several ways. But nearly all of them stop working once the surrounding air is hotter than your skin, which sits around 35 degrees. Above that point, the air is no longer pulling heat out of you. It is pushing heat into you. And you are left with one tool, and only one. Sweat, you perspire, the sweat evaporates, and evaporation carries heat away. That tool has one absolute requirement. The air has to be dry enough to accept the moisture, Sweat only cools you when it evaporates. And this is the difference between a dry desert and Dubai. In the open Sahara, the air is bone dry. So sweat flashes off your skin and cools you, and a person can survive astonishing temperatures. Dubai does not get that mercy, because it sits on the edge of the Persian Gulf, a shallow, enclosed sea of warm water. Under the summer sun, that sea evaporates into the coastal air and saturates it with humidity. So the sweat on your skin has nowhere to go. It runs instead of evaporating. Your one cooling system is switched off at the exact moment your life depends on it. That is what the feels like number is measuring. It is saying that in that heat and that humidity, your body cannot cool itself the way it could in dry air. So the danger to you is not the danger of a 43-degree day. It is the danger of something close to 60. The thermometer tells the truth about the air. The feels like number tells the truth about the danger. And it is the danger, not the air, that decides whether a place can be lived in. So where exactly is the line? At what point does heat and humidity stop being survivable? For years, science had a single famous answer to that question. And recently, that answer was tested and found to be wrong in a way that should alarm you. The famous number is a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees. Wet bulb temperature is heat and humidity combined into one figure, essentially the coldest that evaporation alone can get you. And the theory, developed by climate scientists and made prominent by researchers including El-Fadi El-Tahir at MIT, held that a wet bulb reading of 35 degrees was the absolute ceiling of human survival. Above it, even a fit person, sitting in the shade, with unlimited water and a fan, would die within hours, because sweating could no longer shed enough heat. That theory is exactly why the Persian Gulf became famous in climate science. The models projected it would be the first region on Earth to cross that line. But here's what almost no one outside the field knows. That 35-degree threshold was never tested on actual human beings. It was a physics calculation, an estimate from theory. And a few years ago, a team of physiologists at Penn State, led by Daniel Veselio and Larry Kinney, decided to measure it directly. They put real people, young and healthy, into a controlled chamber, had them perform the light activity of ordinary daily life, and slowly raised the heat and humidity until each person's core temperature began to climb out of control, the point at which the body can no longer keep up. The line was not 35. It was lower, significantly lower. In warm, humid conditions, the point at which a young, healthy adult's body began to fail was closer to 31 degrees wet bulb, not 35. And in some conditions, lower still. Later physiological work extended this to older and more vulnerable people and found their limits lower again, in some cases many degrees below the old theoretical number. Read what that means plainly. The line past which heat makes a place uninhabitable is closer than we were told. The danger does not begin at some distant, extreme threshold. It begins earlier, at conditions that are already occurring. The 35-degree figure, the one still quoted in most coverage, was the optimistic version. The real ceiling of human survivability sits lower, which means places like the Gulf are not approaching the edge of habitability at some point in the future. They are already brushing against it now. And that reframes what is happening in Dubai. It is not a city bracing for a line it might cross decades from now. It is a city that has already, in practical terms, crossed the line during its summers, and has survived only by engineering its way around it. Which brings us to how a city actually becomes uninhabitable, because it does not happen all at once. Uninhabitability is not a switch that flips. It is a sequence, a series of retreats, and you can watch Dubai moving through it stage by stage. The first stage is that outdoor labor becomes lethal. When the feels-like temperature climbs into the 50s, physical work in the sun is no longer merely hard. It is deadly. And this is why the United Arab Emirates enforces a rule every summer banning outdoor work during the hottest hours of the middle of the day. from roughly mid-June to mid-September. That ban is an official admission, written into law, that for part of each day. Part of each year, the outdoor environment cannot be worked in and survived. The second stage is that outdoor public life empties out. In a Dubai summer, the streets in the middle of the day are largely deserted. Life moves indoors, into malls, offices, homes, and the city becomes a network of cooled boxes connected by cooled cars, with as little time as possible spent in the open air between them. The outdoors, the shared public space that every city is built around, quietly ceases to function for months. The third stage is total dependence on artificial cooling. Air conditioning in Dubai is not a comfort, it is life support, and the scale of it is staggering. Cooling can account for up to 80% of a single building's entire electricity demand, and across the city as a whole, air conditioning consumes something close to half of all the power Dubai uses. The city has been rebuilt, physically, around the machinery of holding the real climate at bay. Each of those stages is a further step out of the natural environment and into the artificial one. Dubai has walked all the way through them. It has engineered a way to stay inhabited past the point where it is naturally habitable, and that engineering, that unbroken hum of cooling, is now the only thing standing between the city and the number. But uninhabitability, when it comes through cooling, does not land on everyone equally. And this is the part of the story that is easiest to miss from inside an air-conditioned tower. In a city kept alive by cooling, access to cooling becomes the dividing line between safety and danger. And cooling costs money, and it costs power. So, the city splits in two. There is the Dubai of the chilled apartments and the cooled offices, and the indoor ski slope, where the 58-degree afternoon is a number you glance at on your phone and never actually stand in. And there is the other Dubai, the enormous workforce of laborers and drivers and delivery riders who built the first city and keep it running, and whose work is, by definition, outdoors. Picture one of them. A construction worker, or a rider on a motorbike. At 2 in the afternoon in late July, in the hour just outside the midday ban, or in a job the ban does not quite reach. The air temperature is 43. On his body, inside his clothing, in that humidity, it is closer to 58. And the humidity means his sweat is not evaporating, so it is not cooling him. His body is losing the fight in real time. And 30 floors above him, behind sealed glass, someone is watching the same city on the same afternoon and feeling none of it. For that worker, uninhabitable is not a projection about the future. It is the air he is standing in, right now. The heat that makes a city uninhabitable makes it uninhabitable for the poorest and the most exposed first, and only later, if ever, for everyone else. And underneath the whole arrangement sits a fragility that is easy to forget precisely because the machines work so well. A naturally habitable city can lose its electricity and simply be uncomfortable for a while. Dark, hot, inconvenient, but survivable. An artificially habitable city cannot. Dubai's habitability now rests entirely on an unbroken supply of power to run the cooling, and it needs that power most in exactly the conditions, peak summer, peak afternoon, when demand is highest and the grid is under the most strain. The city has traded natural habitability for engineered habitability, and engineered habitability has a single point of failure. The thing keeping the city alive is a compressor. The compressor needs the grid, and the grid must not fail on the worst day of the year. Think about what a prolonged power failure during a peak heat wave would actually mean in a place like this. Not discomfort. Interior temperatures in an unpowered building in that climate climb fast. And the people least able to escape, the old, the sick, the poor, are exactly the ones the failure would reach first. A city that is uninhabitable, but cooled, is separated from a city that is simply lethal by nothing more than the reliability of its electricity. That is the bargain Dubai has struck to exist. And it is a bargain that a growing share of the world is going to have to strike too. Because Dubai is not a freak. It is the leading edge. The Persian Gulf is projected to be the first region on Earth to routinely cross the thresholds of human survivability, but it is not alone in approaching them. The same physiological limits are being tested and increasingly breached across South Asia, the North China Plain, parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and Mexico, densely populated regions where hundreds of millions of people live, and where access to cooling is far from universal. The scale of what is coming is captured in a single projection. Under current warming trajectories, a majority of people born in the last few years are expected to face unprecedented exposure to extreme heat across their lifetimes. And this is not a distant hypothetical. Extreme heat has already killed more than 260,000 people worldwide since the year 2000, making it one of the deadliest weather hazards on the planet. Dubai is simply the place that reached the edge first, and had the wealth to build the machinery to survive past it. It is the test case for a question the rest of the world is now walking toward. What do you do when the outdoor air crosses the line past which a body cannot survive in it, and the only way to keep a city alive is to run the whole thing on machines? So picture the honest image, the one that holds this entire story. On a wall somewhere in the city, a weather sensor reads 43 degrees, the truth about the air. And beside it, on a phone screen, the feels like number glows in the high 50s, the truth about the danger. Between those two numbers lives everything, and all around them, unheard because it never stops, is the hum of the cooling, the machinery that holds the city on the survivable side of that gap, drawing power that must not be interrupted. Outside the glass, the air has already crossed the line. It is, for those months, an environment a human body cannot survive in unassisted. Inside, the machines push it back, degree by degree, as long as the current keeps flowing. That thin electric membrane, the cold air the machines make against the lethal air outside, is now the only thing that makes the city livable. Dubai did not avoid becoming uninhabitable. It became uninhabitable, and then it built a way to live there anyway. And the number on that screen, the one that looks like a misprint, is not the story. The story is the quiet